This is Muntaha Shah, your host for the Shared Pens Official's brand new podcast. It's been a good time since we started our podcast related to several issues we see in our society. But today we are going to talk about something that is way too important for the people related to the literature. Yes, we are going to talk about importance of techniques in poetry. And we have with us Kalpesh Desai Sahab, the president and CEO of Agile Financial Technologies, a poet and an entrepreneur. Kalpesh Sahab runs his own blog on Instagram at kalpeshdesai.official, which is a teaser to a book that he is writing called Of Ink and Paper, an entrepreneur's journey. The blog chronicles his journey as an entrepreneur and seeks to share life lessons, breakthroughs, and also personal insights that have come his way. Desai Sahab, we are really honored to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Desai Sahab, tell us what, according to you, is the base for being a poet.
A base for being a poet? I think it's basically what occurs to you, really. So, who is a poet, really? A poet is someone who has the ability to look at a situation and be able to take something that's abstract out of the situation and then mouth that in words and rhyme and verses. That's who a poet really is. So, most of the poetry that you see out there are not conjured. They are based on life experiences or somebody's insights. It's also a very interesting medium, really, because if I were to write 2 pages of an essay on a particular topic around motivation, that may be very boring. But if I were to write around 10 to 12 lines in that rhyme and are in verse, I think that's what people would listen to, able to grasp. The fact that it may sound beautiful will also reside with them for a very long time. So the message gets across very, very fast. So I think so poets really have a role in society where I think they need to essentially look at playing a larger role in terms of how messages essentially get spread across in the community.
Indeed. And what will be the scenario of literature without the consideration of these poetic techniques?
So I think, so one is, I mean, if you look at my poems, for example, I would use sonnets, I would use rhymes. I've just started exploring tankas and haikus, for example, as styles of poetry. But, I think um, I've also experimented with hyperboles and alliterations to a great extent. But I am not a firm believer in textbook poetry.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is that I think the creative form, everybody's got a very creative form. I've seen poets whose poems don't rhyme at all. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that those words aren't beautiful. In fact, those could be some of the most powerful words that you'd hear. But what would be the role of literature? I think, I mean, if you've not grown up on Shakespeare, you haven't grown up at all, right? So I think we've devoured, a lot of us through school, we've devoured those books. Um, you know, we've devoured, I mean, if you've grown up in the Indian subcontinent, you've devoured Kipling's, poems as well. So I think we've come up with our own genre. I think from my perspective, I mean, I'll just give you one example. I don't not know Urdu,
Mhm.
but I said that the best way for me to learn Urdu would be to essentially start writing poems in Urdu, and that's what I started doing. So I think that's one of the best ways to essentially grasp the power of the language that essentially comes in. So I think literature is not complete unless you have poetry with it. Does that answer your question?
सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट, जैसा कि आपने कहा कि आपने उर्दू में भी लिखना शुरू किया है, तो क्या आप एक दो अशार हमारे लिसनर्स के लिए?
Yeah, I will. I'll just pull up my poem if you don't mind. Then I'll read that out for you. Second.
जी.
So what I started doing is I started putting in words in both Urdu and Hindi so that my readers can essentially understand. So
Mhm.
I'll read out one. I'll first say it in Urdu and then I will give the translation in English. उम्मीद
जी बिल्कुल।
दरवाजे उम्मीद दरवाजे पे इंतजार कर रही है, जो मुस्तकबिल का इशारा बताती है। वो पहले भी यूं ही खड़ी थी, कमल को ना तरक्की करने की मन्नतें मांगती थी. Hope lingers at the door that opens into tomorrow, as she had done so many times before, begging you to not let those seeds of doubt grow.
बहुत खूब, माशाल्लाह.
Thank you. So I think I mean, this is just a new dabble, but I mean, my mother tongue is Gujarati, and obviously, I mean, I do speak Hindi, but Urdu's always had a it's the language of love and politics and romance. So I think it's something that this sits very easily on my.
जुबान है जी. So, so which is the best as per you, writing with a purpose or writing with a passion?
So okay, so in my perspective, I write with a purpose. I don't write with So I mean, I think. However, I would not release what I've written till I'm passionate about what I've written. And by that, what I mean is that I would like it to be perfect. I would clear it of grammar as much as possible. I would make sure that it's whole and complete. And if you look at my poetry, for me, I think it's incomplete unless it ends with a positive ending. So, I mean, this is just who I am. So I don't want, even if I may start on a darker note, I will end it positively. That's just basically how it is. So I think, yes, I would write with a purpose. The purpose, so if you look at my poetry perspective, my own perspective, I think my purpose would be to essentially impart. I've been an entrepreneur almost all my life. And being an entrepreneur is not easy. You go through your ups and downs, and it impacts you, it impacts your family, it impacts everybody. And by the time I'm 53 now, by the time I look back and I say, hey, listen, could I have done these things differently? And those are all your insights. Now, you've got two choices. One, you can say, hey, listen, that's, what it is. Or you can start writing it down in a manner where perhaps other entrepreneurs and other people who are going through what I went through when I was 19, 20, 25, 30, 35, and say, okay, this is what the possibilities are. So I think poetry opens up possibilities. And if you look at my byline, I promise to shift your paradigm without a clutch. That's my tagline in the in my bio. What that really means is that we grow up with certain perceptions, and I want to be able to break those perceptions. What I may say may go against what a lot of us have been taught in the past. So what home truths are. I'm very clear on a few things. I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about politics. I don't distinguish between race, gender, or any other basis. That's not. So you will not see that in any of my poetry, and I'll steer clear from those mechanisms. So my purpose is purely motivational, inspirational, romance.
Okay. So you agree with the fact that writing has become a trend more than a passion or a career?
Yes, I think it's become a trend, and I think if you look at Insta poets, for example, I think Instagram poets really became famous. In fact, the term Insta poets became famous after Langley's success, right?
Yeah.
So she's the one who essentially started that whole trend, and a lot of people followed through. And I think there's a large movement online that you see. In fact, I joined the community in August last year. So in another month, it will be a year since I've joined the poetry community. And I made so many friends. It's amazing. I've seen so many amazing poets. I mean, I just shocked me to know that there are so many people out there who, some of them are published, some of them are yet to get published, some of them have ambitions to get published, and some of them deserve to get published.
Indeed. So, and at the end, what should an emerging writer, according to you, keep in mind so as to give a direction to his writing?
Yes, I think one is you recognize what your style is first, right? I mean everybody's got a genre, or everybody's got a particular segment that you're servicing as a poet or a writer. Or somebody may talk about romance, somebody may be writing thrillers, somebody may be essentially writing motivational or inspirational stuff, and you want to be able to hone in on that thing, because what you're writing instinctively and what you're writing really well without effort is what comes to you effortlessly. And that's your segment and genre. If perhaps, they are able to then say that, look at it as any other product that you sell and start focusing on who my readers are. So if you're out there producing, your poem is a product, your book is a product, and you have to have consumers out there who are going to consume that writing, right? So you need to know who your customers are. So if I'm writing, I want to be able to wear my hat, and I want to be able to wear the hat of the person reading the poem. And if the day you can do both at the same time is perhaps when your audience will truly increase, because that's who your readership is. People want to see you engage. People want to see you speak to them in a voice that they hear. So, if it is monotonous or if it's a monologue, maybe people do not want to hear that. If it's about your own problems and you're not quoting any solution, then people may relate to it for a particular while, but then they say, hey, listen, I'm hearing somebody complain. I'm not hearing a solution. So you really want to get that genre right and focus on who your target audience is. That's what I would give as an advice to every writer. So you're not just writing. If you're writing only for yourself and you're a multi-billionaire and you don't care who reads it, it's fine, But if the ultimate objective is to say, hey, listen, I want to get my book out there. My story needs to be told. There's no point in getting a book out there if nobody's going to read it.
Mm.
So the only way that you can get a book out there that people will read is to know who is going to read that book and service that audience well, like you would at any product that you sell in the market.
Yeah, I agree with that. Poetry is not just about rhyming words and creating pretty pictures on the page. It's about communicating a story through a unique medium. If you want to learn how to write poetry, you will need to know some of the basic techniques used to organize and communicate your words. While there are many popular poetry forms such as haiku, limerick, and sonnets, there are also some techniques that are common to all types of poetry. If you are ready to learn how to write poetry, you will want to make sure you know these important techniques. Let me present my heartfelt gratitude to Desai Sahab for being with us today and to our listeners. Thank you so much. With this, I'll take your leave with the promise that we will be back with another exciting podcast of the SharePens Official. Till then, take care.
Thank you so very much for having me.